Mayor, members of the council, it is my pleasure this evening to introduce to you Mr. Ben Calabretta. Ben is an employee of WSU and volunteer on the Transportation Commission. He works in the Center for Public Policy, is that correct? Civic Engagement, excuse me, at WSU, and is currently serving in his first term as the chair of the Transportation Commission. He's going to give you a report this evening on the activities of the commission over the past year.
Well, welcome, Ben.
I have a PowerPoint and everything.
Okay.
So if you need a pointer, it's this little green guy right here.
Okay.
Advance to the right.
Okay.
You liaison the transportation.
Okay. So, thank you for the intro. I don't know how long he's been thinking about that, but that was pretty good. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here to talk about what we've been talking about in the Transportation Commission. We work with a couple of the city employees like Les and Bill, and I know Jim is our liaison there. And basically we are just always talking about safe transportation, effective and efficient transportation, and everything that goes into that. There's a lot of thought, a lot of communication, and there's always a balance between what we maybe think needs to be addressed and what is actually possible, and we work pretty closely with Les to make those kind of things happen. So if I'm sure at least the City Council probably recognizes this. This is the Moscow Multimodal Transportation Plan. There was a lot of work and effort that went into this plan, a lot of studies, that kind of thing. So we, last year we made it a priority to go through and review all of the action items, which there's several dozen of them, of what needed to be happening and what could be happening in Moscow as far as transportation goes. So essentially we reviewed all of those action items. We prioritized them. Everyone on the commission rated them as far as like what they thought was the most important, what needed to be addressed, and the timeline that needed to be addressed. And then we met with city employees to talk about what was feasible. A lot of it, there's a lot of different types of items in here, but what we focused on mostly, like going back and looking over the last year, has to do a lot with bicycle transportation, which is timely since this is Bike Month. That was not planned at all. So, bicycles. Just want to talk about this first. If you haven't seen this is a new sign for the Moscow Greenway. I think the council has seen it before, but maybe some people haven't. But the Greenway is one of those things where it's essentially a transportation route, and I'll show you a map in a second, but provides safe transportation for even like kids can take it, and even though there's motor traffic on those routes, they're still safe. Things tend to move a little slower. There's tree cover, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things we talked about. We also addressed downtown parking for bicycles, not for cars, and also just bike facilities throughout the city, and a lot of discussion about routes and how bikes can move through the city safely. At any point, if you have questions, let me know. So this is just, it's not very close, I can tell, but this is the Greenway route, and you can kind of see, look, I have a pointer. This is Main Street, and then this is a route that goes out towards the junior high, and then back south towards the fairgrounds, and then back over to Main Street here. So essentially these are all routes that were deemed safe. You know, kids could ride them, things move a little slower, and it's part of a bigger bicycle network, and I'll show you that in a second, but this is kind of the first step in kind of addressing that bikes are an important part of everyday life in Moscow as far as like community and leisure, that kind of thing.
Well, Ben, and the good news about that goes right by the new ball fields.
Yeah, and the ball fields has I'll be talking about the bike facilities in a second, but the ball fields was a big part of that discussion too, because we realized there'd be a lot more traffic, especially kids on bikes and families on bikes and everyone else that are going to be going to the ball fields in the middle of that residential area. So downtown bicycle parking, there's a couple things that happened over the past year, the first of which was an audit, and this was performed by some of Les's staff, and essentially we needed to know how many bike racks were downtown, and I don't have a map of the downtown area, but I think you can all kind of picture it. It's about 3 blocks wide, roughly, and probably 7 blocks long, starting up north, maybe south of Rosars, and ending down by Gritman. So anyway, the audit was to go around town, find out how many bike racks are actually out there, how many bikes could park without causing some kind of obstruction to like pedestrians or vehicles or whatever. And so that was one of the first things we did, and that kind of helped us draft this kind of document, a guidance document really, that the commission put the work into the document, I think mostly, and then it's kind of just, it's not like a policy, but it's meant to help guide the city when they have opportunities to put in new bicycle racks, like where they should go or how many of them should be per block, basically to meet all those needs, because there are some definitely high concentration areas as far as bicycle parking goes. What you're looking at there is a picture of just a temporary bike rack that was put in last summer or last spring and went through about halfway through the fall, essentially during the farmers market season. But this is at the corner of 3rd and Main. And this is a temporary rack. It's not there all the time. It's not there in the winter because bike use goes down. But this was one of the ways that we deemed would be kind of an important thing to do. This was actually fabricated in the city shop, if I'm correct on that one. So they, as far as I know, used materials that were just kind of hanging around and put it together. But it was used pretty well, like during the farmers market, which is, you know, one of the things we struggle with is like, do you have enough parking for like the high use times, like for the farmers market, when there's like thousands of people downtown, but then the rest of the week they're going to be unused. So this was one of our solutions, was bringing in temporary racks, and we're still, I think, kind of trying to figure out what exactly to do with the farmers market, but as far as bicycle parking goes, but this is one of the solutions we had there. And then one of the other things is we've worked a little bit with the Arts Commission to get some kind of like artistic bike racks. And I think we identified a few spaces, but I think there's something holding that up. But we would like to have more of like artistic bike racks actually throughout the downtown, and so it's not just kind of the plain looking bike racks, but something that is more appealing to the eye as well. So moving on to the bike facilities plan. This is a bit of a sneak peek for everyone. This is something we've been working on for at least 8 months, or it seems like a long time anyway. So this, obviously you can't, you're going to get a lot more detail that I think Les is going to come present on the detail as far as what this means. But this is a map of Moscow, and this is the plan for like 2016. This maps out all of the bike facilities, and what I mean by bike facilities would be like sharrows or bike lanes on the side of roads, or what else am I not thinking of?
Buffered bike lanes.
Buffered bike lanes. There's a lot of different ways to move bikes safely through the city. So this is the plan that we came up with through several revisions to basically, not necessarily all of this will be marked, but this is like all of the streets that you see that have a different color there will have some sort of marker or some way for bikes to know, and vehicles actually to know that bikes will be using that space and this is how they'll be using it. So depending on the street width, you know, that kind of thing, depending on parking that already exists or maybe parking that needs to be taken out, this kind of shows you that we value bicycling as a transportation mode, and we want to essentially get the whole city on this plan and get these facilities put in place. And as far as I know, we have grant money to get most of this started. I might be speaking, I'm not a city employee, so I don't know that for sure. But anyway, so there'll be more details coming on this. I wanted to let you all know, though, we've been working on it for a while. We have several bicyclists on the commission who are very familiar with the different routes. So we feel like it's in a pretty good place, and Les will be talking more about this at a future city council meeting. So then I just wanted to kind of talk about what we're going to be focusing on in the future. We don't necessarily have a timeline for this, but these are some of the things we've talked about. With all the work that we've done with bicycling over the last year, essentially, it's been mostly like we do a couple other things here and there, but it's been mostly talking about bicycles as a mode of transportation. We went back to the multimodal transportation plan and figured out like what we should talk about next. And these are the three things that really came up. Intersection mobility standards, so really has to do with, actually, I'm not sure what that has to do with. Is that accessibility? Yeah. Sorry, like, just blanked on that. But I think it has to do with accessibility. There are standards out there, and we need to be more familiar with them. This is one of the things, like, the whole commission is kind of like, well, this seems like something we should talk about, so that's why it's up there on the list. A complete streets policy, people throw around complete streets and that it's a thing and kind of maybe know what goes into it, but essentially a complete street is a street that is safe for vehicles and pedestrians and bicycles and includes kind of all of those things. We don't actually have a policy for that, so we're going to look into whether that's something that we should do, and then if it is, then how that can be implemented. And then also with the focus on bicycles, we've briefly talked about a tourism campaign. We're not sure what that would look like. That would probably have well, I would imagine a lot of collaboration with other commissions or other groups in the city as well. But those are some of the things that we came up with from the transportation plan. So with that, are there questions about the commission or anything you saw here tonight or anything like that?
Well, Ben, one of the exciting things, unless it's our last council meeting brought this up, that new Greenway path that's going to open up pretty soon. That'll be a pretty neat thing. And when's that going to open up? In a couple of weeks, Les? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we can actually have a ribbon cutting this month, as Bike Month. The signs are on order, and the sign posts will start going in here over the next couple of weeks. So if we can get everything in place, I hope that we could do something towards the end of the month for a ribbon cutting on the Greenway.
Right. Questions for Ben from council?
Ben, you might also point out the signage for the routes throughout the pathway system that the Path Commission's working with you guys on. That's maybe something that everybody would
That's
need
true.
to know about. We know that these signs are underway, and Les is working real hard on that. And I know the Transportation Commission went through a lot of iterations of what should be on the signs and that there's too much on this sign and not enough on that one, and how big it should be, and there's been a lot of work go into that.
Yeah,
So-
thank you. That is just to expand. That would so what Jim's talking about is like the wayfinding signs. So we've worked. Specifically we've figured out like what kind of wayfinding signs should be like on the trail. So the Paradise Creek Trail that goes through town, like what should be on those signs and which direction should they point and like what direction you're coming from and all that kind of stuff. So I think we've pretty much nailed that down. The bigger task with all of the bike facilities, with that big map that you saw, is really the wayfinding signs throughout the town, like what that's going to look like, what are our important destinations, what are people going to be biking to, like basically providing that direction throughout town. So yes, I forgot to mention that. That's something else that we've talked a lot about as well. Some of the details of the wayfinding signs throughout town are pretty detailed. We've given some just kind of general thoughts about like what would be good destinations, that kind of thing, but we're pretty much leaving that to Les and his crew to figure out where all those signs should go and that kind of thing. That's a little over our heads, so, or a little too detailed, I guess. So,
Thank you.
thanks, Jim.
Well, thank you, Ben, and thank you for serving as the leader of the Transportation Commission. It's very good. So thanks
Welcome.
for the
Thank
presentation.
you.
Very nice.